Hello friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. We've got an oldie but goodie here. It's a well-made little guitar. It's a tenor guitar, a 4-string guitar. Don't know how old this thing is. I'd have to say 20s, 30s, somewhere in there, just as a guess. It's very well made. It's mahogany all the way around. Neck, everything's mahogany. The fretboard appears, well, it's not ebony because it's too soft for ebony because you can see too many finger grooves and things in it. And it's just cracked, the length of it. It's really cracked up bad, the fingerboard is. Let's see if you can see some of the cracks in there. All the way up and down through there you can see cracks. And the end of the fingerboard is wore off and missing a piece here. This thing has got some major issues on the back. There's a huge crack all the way down through the back here. You can probably see that there. There's another huge crack all the way down this way. There's another pretty big crack that goes across the grain up here, which is really bad. 2 braces off the inside are missing. I first gave the customer a fairly high quote for fixing the whole thing. But I think the customer's going to be happy because I think I've decided how I can fix it a lot cheaper. I always try to do the easy thing first, and you know, at least that's what I espouse to. And in this case, I thought, well, I'm going to just take the binding off, take the back off, and fix it really well. And that's what I would prefer to do in one way, but that's a lot more expensive for the customer. And will I really improve it that much more over fixing it in place? And in this particular case, after looking at it again, I believe I can fix it in place cheaper and do just as well. It's just a little harder because I have to go through this sound hole. And the problem with going through the sound hole is my hand won't even fit through it. I mean, it's way smaller than my knuckles going across my hand. So I can't get my hand in there at all. Kind of like building a ship in a bottle. If I can figure out how to get through here, put the braces in here, and fix all these cracks and everything, the customer is going to be way money ahead, and it'll even look better because then I won't have to take this binding off. The binding's in actually very good shape, so I really didn't want to do that anyway. So that's my plan of attack. It's a ship in a bottle guitar fix. Because I can't get through the sound hole, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to do as much of it I can from the outside. So what I've done is I've painted water in this long crack here. I'm only going to work on one side at a time. Moved it around a lot with my hands, and it's really, you know, pumping glue out of there now. I've got glue on top of the water, and I can just show you how that pump action works. If you can probably see when I squeeze it, glue coming out of that crack. See? Okay. Well, what I'm doing is I just keep doing that. I keep pumping it because that will get glue all the way through there, and you know it's going to be glued good. Once I get this crack fixed, then I'll go to the next crack, and we'll just take it one crack at a time like this. And I'm just wiping off the excess glue here. It's going to be a lot more squeeze out once I put the clamp on it. I'm going to put the clamp on it very lightly at first, and keep working the crack by hand to try to make it line up good. And it's lined up pretty good. I can't really hardly feel it. Just a little bit of feeling it right here. If I could get a clamp across here, I think I could fix that. So I'll try another clamp right here. Okay, that seemed to do the trick really good. I can't even feel the crack. It's really nice. So we got that one crack glued up real good. We're going to be very careful that this doesn't get bumped. So I'm going to let it set for 24 hours and let that crack dry as good as I can let it dry. We've got both cracks glued on both sides from the outside. Now we're going to, like I said before, build a ship in a bottle. We're going to try to put the internal braces in here. I believe there are a total of 3 that are missing, and it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error to get them to the right length. So I'm just going to cut a little test piece of something and stick it in there and see if it's the right length, and then we'll cut a brace to match it. I have hand fitted this brace into the place where it goes. This is approximately where it goes on the back. And I have looked on the inside of the brace that's remaining, and there's a long taper on these, and so I'm just going to knock that off. Actually, I think I'll just take it to the bandsaw and just saw a slight taper on each end and then touch it up with the plane. Yeah, I've got the brace approximately in the right shape. Some of the braces on the top have a rounded top to the brace, and others are flat like this. So the ones that appear closest to the sound hole appear to be rounded. So I'm just going to round this one off since it's going to be visible through the sound hole. Okay, it looks like a pretty good brace. Maybe just touch it with a little bit of sandpaper just to make it look a little smoother. That looks pretty good. It looks like it belongs in there, so let's see how it fits. Looks like it's laying in there pretty good. Just going to taper the ends just a tiny amount to make them match the curve in there just a little bit. Just went handheld here to show you that the brace looks pretty good inside there. It matches from one side to the other. Okay, we're just going to glue up the brace. I've got some posts cut that look like they're going to wedge in there okay, best we can. Putting plenty of glue on this brace because we're not going to be able to glue the inside. You can see that I have the other brace in there. I put in two braces so far. I put in this brace, and I presently have this brace being glued in there. Now the problem is there's another brace that goes back in here, and this is definitely where it's like building a ship in a bottle. Okay, I can't get my hand through the sound hole. No way, it's impossible. This brace has to go approximately right about here on the back. I'm actually moving it that way about the width of the brace more than it used to be, and the reason is this other brace is way back here and this brace is close. I mean, these two braces were very close together, so I'm actually moving it towards the other brace a little bit for two or three reasons. Number one, that'll be a little better for the symmetry of it, and also it'll give me a little better grip on the brakes that are across here. So what I'm doing is I'm borrowing some technology from setting a sound post in a violin, and I have this coat hanger wire, and it's ground down to a sharp point, and then I just bend a tiny fish hook on the very end of it, and it's not even a full fish hook, it's just bent a little bit, and then I take and screw that into the center of this brace, and I'm thinking I can finagle it through the sound hole. And actually right now you can see it won't go, so I'm going to have to bend it a little bit here and force it, and then it's in there, and of course it fell off, so I'm just doing this dry right now with no glue, but I can, maybe get the glue on it, lay it in here like this, screw this back in, and then work it back into the waist area, and any luck, pull it into location just like that. It's in the perfect location right there. So that's how I'm going to do this, I believe. And I think I can do it without getting a ton of glue spread everywhere. It looks really pretty good right where it's at. I kind of like that. I wish I would have had glue on it. Okay, I've got plenty of glue on this, and I know already that I can't put the wire on this and get it in there, so I'm going to have to try to just lay it down in there. And of course it turned exactly 180 degrees over so that the hole's in the wrong place. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see inside the sound hole. I've made this stick with a notch on it that I can press down on and hold it in place, that brace. I've got another post in here that I'm going to put in on that brace and stand it up. I can put this right next to this, and then this will help hold it while I'm standing it up, if you can see what I'm doing there. I put this right next to it, and then I can hopefully stand this up. It ain't easy, I can tell you that for sure. I've already tried it. So I'm holding the brace down pretty close to the center, and I'm hoping that this post is the right length. That's the first problem you have. If it's not the right length, you don't have any chance of doing this anyway. And it appears to be just a fraction too long to get it to stand up. If I had a stiffer, another dowel, I'm going to try to get another dowel and see if I can force it over with another dowel. Well, that actually went easy getting the first brace in there. I'll kind of try to demonstrate what I did on this last one. I learned something. You know, if you can do this and learn something, you're doing pretty good. And I learned something. What I learned was that if I, instead of trying to move the top, move that bottom with this stick, I can actually rotate this stick and walk it right over and straighten the post right up. So that works pretty good. See if you can see in there. Can you see? There's the internal post and the brace back there. Yeah, you can see it. And you can see the post on that side, and maybe if I can figure out how to do this in front of the camera with looking at the monitor. And anyway, there's another post on this side over here too. So there it is. Okay, so we did it. And it looks real good in there. It looks like it's tight to the back, which is what we want. From a strictly functional point of view, the body is now fairly solid. We've got the cracks fixed. You can hear it's no rattling going on. I put the new bracing on the inside. It's all glued down real good. I think we're in pretty good shape there. I do hear a rattle here and now on the top, so there may be a loose brace in here. We'll have to get in there and find it. I bet this brace coming across here might be loose. Can't get my hand in or out. I can get my hand in about that far. The next thing we have to do though, the neck angle, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that neck angle, but it's really bad. It's no way to really show it. It hits the top almost instantly. It's cocked this way, and of course I'm exaggerating, but it should be this way. And completely level would be okay, but just slightly below level would be much better. And right now it's quite a bit above level. So this neck, I don't see any way to fix it without a neck reset. One of the biggest problems is that this fretboard is just in terrible shape. So I'm going to make an effort to take this fretboard off. I just hope we don't destroy it in the process. The only good news is that it's already really loose. Well, there you go. That wasn't hard. I promise you I didn't know that was going to happen. I was just lifting up with my finger like that, and I could see it was giving more and more, and so I just lifted up a little bit harder and it popped right off. Sometimes you get lucky. And well, it's the old good news, bad news thing. The good news is they dovetailed it in here and did a real nice job. Well, it's good news in that they built it well, but it's bad news in that I have to get it apart. Oh my goodness. That's going to be tough because that neck is in there tight. I like to make all my equipment and tools when I can. I've just taken an old teapot here, I guess is what you'd call this, or a tea kettle, I guess. I'm not really sure what they call it. I'm not into the kitchen stuff. But anyway, I probably got this out of a dump or someplace. I salvage things that I think I can use in my shop. I took and put just a brass pipe threaded end here with a nipple on it, and I heated this plastic tubing with my heat gun and softened it up, forced it over there. On this end, I have the end of a, it's kind of like a hypodermic needle. It's not really a hypodermic needle. It was for injecting dye into a print head. What I've used in the past is just a basketball inflation tube, or inflator here, the kind that you use on your air compressor for just inflating balls. So I'm gonna try this injector first and see how that works. Basically, I'm just going to heat this up on my electric little cooker deal here in the shop. And this is hinged so that the pressure won't build up, but the steam will come through this hose, I believe. Okay, I think you can see how I've got this rigged up. I drilled some small holes in the neck, right in this area here, little 1/16 inch holes, just big enough to get this point down in. And I switched it to the basketball or ball inflator needle, and you can see that it's sending water, hot water and steam down in these holes. And actually I could make those holes a hair bigger. I can barely get the needle down in there. I switched back to the one that looks like a hypodermic needle because it goes down in these holes much better. And you can see it's pumping water down in there and pumping steam. It's very hot. It's hard to even hold that. It's so hot. The basketball or the ball filling needle worked better. This one's doesn't seem to be letting much out. It fits down in the holes better, so I guess I'm just going to have to make the holes a little bit bigger so I can get the basketball needle down in there. I've gone back to the ball inflation nozzle and drilled slightly bigger holes yet so that this nozzle could go down in there pretty easy. And if anything, it's spitting out a lot of water, so hopefully that's going to soften the joint. We'll take it back to the bench and see what we can do with it. Taking an X-Acto blade and just sticking it down in the slot there and just lifting out the old glue and junk that's in the slot. I'm using the blunt back of the blade to lift. Put my thumbs against the back of the neck here and push, see if I can force anything, and I have to say not much. The old finish is turning milky, which is not my favorite thing to have happen here, but usually that will clear back up once it dries. Years ago I made up a real crude jig. This is just angle iron welded together, and I've got leather pads underneath here to protect the top. And I have a sacrificial block of wood that's been smoothed out to press against the neck heel, and I'm just tightening it slightly to see if I can feel anything giving. It doesn't appear to be giving much, if it's giving at all, but under pressure like that I'm going to steam it again and see if that will help anything. Once again, I've got the steam going. I've added these extra clamps here to keep the body from rocking as I put pressure on this. I manhandled it quite a bit and wiggled it quite a bit and got it a little looser, and I'm just hoping that this now will knock it loose. I'm trying to do it without breaking it, obviously, but boy, it's tight. It's always been the story of my life. Whenever I have to take a neck off of one, it's usually one that's really glued in there good. It sure doesn't act like it wants to come out of there. I gotta be honest, I don't know when I ever ran up to one that was any tighter than this one. It's just sucks that it has to be this bad, this tight, when it really needs to come out. I wouldn't be going through all this if I didn't think it really needs to come out of there, and it definitely does. I guess I'm just going to go back to the desk and work on it manually and see if we can't finally just force it out of there, because it's pretty darn loose now, but it just doesn't seem to want to give up that last little bit. I have spent at least another hour, maybe hour and a half, just working on this neck. I ground down this little, it was already a very fine blade, but I ground it down small enough that I could stick it down inside of here, and I just kept working it and working it and working it all the way around. Finally got it down in there. Then I could wiggle it by hand, and I just, literally that was when I took it out right there. I didn't take it out beforehand. I got it loose, and then I just jerked it out of there just then, as you saw. Came out actually pretty clean, believe it or not, compared to all the trouble I had getting it out of there. So now we can breathe a sigh of relief and move forward from here. I found out what the noise was in the top, and this first brace was completely loose in there. So we'll fix that up and put that back in also. To be perfectly honest with you, while I was doing so much work on this, we actually opened this crack back up on the back again. So we will fix that crack yet again and make sure that it's good and solid. Anyway, we're going to work on it now and get her all fixed back up, and then we'll start working on cleaning up this neck joint and setting the angle to the proper angle. As you can see, I've got all kinds of little clamps here, clamped up, holding that other brace that was loose. I've got it glued in there. This hole's so small, I couldn't get a mirror in there, and the clamps and my hands and everything. You can't get your hand in there anyway. So anyway, what I did was I took this little tiny mirror and put it in there and shined the light down on it, and just had to do it kind of like working backwards. And anyway, I got that in there and got it back in the place where it used to be, and I had to use this wire again to actually stick the brace up in there and hold it in place, because you can't get your hand in there. But be that as it may, it's fixed. Now I am working on this neck joint. While that glue is setting up on the braces and everything, I've got a chisel here. I'm trying not to actually cut the wood. I'm just trying to scrape the wood and cut the glue off. It doesn't hurt too much if you end up taking wood off of this and you make the joint loose, because you need it to be a little loose to be able to get the angle right, and then you put wedges and shims in there to fill up the space and get it just tight and perfect as you can get it. Once again, I'm just trying to make hay while the sun's shining, while that's all still setting up and gluing over there. I've got this dovetail fairly clean here, so I don't need to do too much more on the neck, but I turn my attention to this, and you can see there's a real problem here. I think you can. First of all, the whole end of this is just shaved off. It's really chipped and shaved off bad, and then it's missing a piece of wood here. Obviously there's deep gouges in the fretboard and all that, but you know, and it's cracked all the way up down through here. So it's in really bad shape. I'm not too concerned about the cracks and all that. We more or less can fill those and make them look good, and re-dye the thing and make it look pretty good. These little dents and stuff, you know, they're kind of like character anyway for something this old, but we'll take a little bit of that out as we level this back off. The part that is bad is this up here and this right here. I'm actually tempted to take this fret out, believe it or not, and actually route half of the fingerboard away on the back side of this second fret, and make a new piece that would have a dado or whatever you want to call it, a rabbit or whatever, to match what I route out here. And in other words, put a new piece, whole new end on this right here. And by half lapping it underneath here, you won't really be able to tell it except looking right at the very edge. And then that will also give it some strength so that it doesn't, so that it's not loose and, you know, separate from the fretboard. The key thing is I'd have to make sure it's exactly the same length as this and that we get the groove back in the exact same place. I mean, I could fill this and put a piece of fill in here, but you know, it just wouldn't look as good, I don't think, and I don't think it would be as a professional as a repair. I'm going to start by go ahead and removing this fret. Got my little fret nipper tool here that pulls those frets out real nice and easy without making too much damage to the fretboard. It's looking like it's hanging at the last second there, so I'm going to wet it down so I don't do too much damage here. If I wet it down, that'll soften the fibers on the ends and keep it from busting out a big splinter chunk of wood, I'm hoping. And it's still knocked out a pretty big chunk. Fortunately, it knocked it out on the side I'm replacing, so it's not bad. A little bit of chipping on the good side, but not too bad. Got a piece of cherry wood here. I know the color doesn't match, but I'm not too worried about the color. This will take leather dye just fine, and I'm pretty sure we can make it look the same. So what I'm going to do, I've measured the thickness here, and it varies a little bit, but it's about 195 thousandths. It's pretty close. So I'm going to cut off a piece of this, a little more than I need, and sand it down in my thickness sander to 195 thousandths. Okay, I took a lot of time and sanded that down to the exact thickness of that fretboard, so I think we're good there. What my goal is to route out half the thickness of this so there'll be like I can put a tongue back under this and glue it to this so that it'll be good and stable. Then I have to route the corresponding tongue on this side, and that's a lot of work, I know that, but I really think that's the way to make it really strong. I have a fairly elaborate setup here. I've got the fretboard clamped down to the table. I have a cross piece here clamped on, so that'll give me a straight edge to route across here in a straight line. So I get a nice straight line across there. And I have this depth set to 90 thousandths, which is less than half the depth of the actual wood. Take this off of here and show you what we ended up with. Well, I gotta be honest, that worked great and it also sucked at the same time. All of this down here, all these cracked pieces of wood, all just came loose. I had it clamped down to the table and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it'd be a problem. But it's so brittle that it just broke into micro pieces all through here. And you can probably see how I've glued it on the back side and got it all back together. I mean, from the front side, it doesn't look too bad at all. So anyway, it's all back together, and it's probably stronger than it was because I used super glue on it and accelerator and got that all fixed. And once we get it glued back down to the fretboard, I mean to the neck, it'll be fine. And we'll fill it all and clean it up. It'll look, you won't even be able to tell it, but it just came apart and was just a wreck. I mean, I literally had to piece about, I couldn't even tell you how many pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least 9 pieces, maybe more than that. And then not to mention this long crack, I went ahead and put super glue in that long crack all the way down through there. I think we caught it at the last living moment that this thing could have been salvaged on that part. Now you can see what we did was we routed out a rabbet behind this, and that's to accept the new rabbet that we're going to route in this piece. And not going to be simple, but we'll figure it out here. I'm going to route the top of this out to go underneath here like so, a half lap, and then when we're done, hopefully it'll be totally flush and you won't be able to hardly tell that it's been repaired. I have the piece that I'm going to route clamped to the table. Once again, I have a straight edge on there to give me a straight line across there where the fret is going to go. I'm going to use this to route out all the rest of the meat there. Actually, that looks pretty darn good. I'm just going to go with that and see how it turns out. That really does look pretty darn good. I'm kind of amazed how good it is. Okay, I'm pretty proud of this joint here. We got the half lap there, we have a half lap here, we put them together. It matches perfectly flush on the top. The back, I have to say, this cherry piece is a little too thick to make this match up, but we can sand that down and get that just right. I also left it just a hair proud on the edges also, just so that I can take that off and make that match the contour and everything. I believe we're ready to go ahead and glue that puppy up. By feel right now, you can't tell it's there. I mean, you literally can't feel any difference at all on the sides, edges, anywhere. It just feels like it's part of it. So I'm real happy with that. Now we'll have to recut this slot. Basically what I do is I cut it without cutting the old fretboard. I'll cut the slot more or less into the new piece of wood, right along the edge of the old piece, because that's where the slot was. So it'll go back exactly in the same place. I have a straight edge across here, and I've got my fret file, and that kind of acts as a vertical thing to keep me straight up and down. It also makes sure that I won't cut into to the old fretboard at all. I'll only be cutting the new wood. So here we go. I've been dressing this slot a little bit with this saw just to make sure that I've got it big enough and deep enough and whatever. So now the fret goes back in here, and we will have to drive it in, of course. Just trying to get it to kind of sit in the slot. It doesn't even want to do that right now. Another one of my high-tech luthier tools is just this little piece of aluminum. That's softer than the fret, so I use that. I put this piece of aluminum right on the fret and make sure I got it halfway straight up and down here and give it a real sharp rap. And she's in there to stay. Now we'll clean up the old fretboard, get rid of some of the dents and finger marks. We won't get rid of all of it because we don't want it to look like it's brand new. We want it to look like it's been well cared for. it looks pretty good. There's some pretty good cracks in here yet. I'm going to just take some regular wood filler, fill them in a little bit, put it on as thinly as I can put it on. I've got a popsicle stick here ground to a very fine edge, like a knife blade edge, that I'm applying this with. Pretty much filled and repaired, leveled out. It looks like heck right now. But I think once we add the magic black dye to it, I think it's going to look beautiful. I think that looks like a real professional job, and that got rid of all the broken pieces and chips off the end of the fretboard. If you look underneath it, you can certainly see where the splice is. And we turn it over, and it just looks like it's part of the fretboard. Surprise, surprise, yet another brace came out of the inside. I was feeling around, I glued this one back over here and on the top, and I was feeling around in there and I felt this one move, and sure enough, the one going across here, just as loose as it could be. As a matter of fact, it's even broke off on the end there. So now I've got to be a magician and get up in there and glue this one up inside there. Here we go again. Wow. That was really easy. Now that we have the neck in and out of this thing, I just thought I should have shown you this before I took it out, but you can see there's quite a gap under here. I could probably put the screwdriver, almost fit the screwdriver under the gap. You know, so the angle is completely wrong. It's just a huge gap here. So, you know, it needs to be relatively flat. In other words, if we were laying this on, maybe another way to show it would be to lay it flat on the guitar, run it alongside the neck, and then you can see how it buries underneath the neck here by, I would say, 1/4 of an inch almost. And so therefore we need to drop this neck down so that at the very worst that it's perfectly level all the way across, and hopefully it would be just a tiny bit of relief below that. That way it'll angle the strings up to the bridge. In order to fix that neck angle, what I'm going to have to do is shave some of this heel of this neck off so that I can, and I'm going to exaggerate, I can turn it in like this more. See, it's flat now, and I need to be able to angle it like that, and I'm exaggerating, of course. So I'm going to have to shave some of this heel off and some of the heel off down here and get it to fit into the slot at a different angle. Then determining the angle that has to be cut off of here, well, it's a very tricky deal, and I'm just basing it on experience over the years, and a little bit goes a long way. So I'm only going to knock, I'm going to, from nothing here, in other words, I'm taking off nothing at this edge, to the down here to the heel, I'm going to probably shave, oh, I don't know, probably start with a 32nd of an inch. And I'm just going to take my razor blade here, and I'm just eyeballing it, and I'm just going to mark it. I have temporarily pushed the neck down in there and just put these 2 wedges in the back edge here to hold it tight, and the neck angle appears to be pretty close now. Now we've got, oh, I don't know, not quite an 1/8 of an inch back here, and it's not touching on the actual guitar top now, so it's riding the neck, and it's just about where it should be. Well, I'm not sure I had my recorder on this, I apologize, but I have glued up the neck joint. I drove these wedges in. These are long tapered wedges. I made them on my sander. They go to basically nothing up to about, oh, I don't know, a little more than a 1/16 of an inch probably right here. And same way with this. This is probably a little bit more than a 1/16, and it drove through the back joint. So anyway, the neck's in there really tight. I put a straight edge on here, and as best I can tell, it looks like there's just going to be just about perfect relief on it. It's really hard to say. Is it going to be perfect or not? There's no black and white rule book on these things. You kind of just have to go by experience. There's just a little bit of space right here at the end of the joint, and I'm going to slide this in there to take up that last little bit of space. Take my little rubber mallet here and just tap it in there, and that'll really tighten up that joint where it won't pull back at all. And I'm going to take an X-Acto knife. Right along this edge here, you can see there's a little bit of stick out from those wedges I put in along the edge. And I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife, my close-up glasses, and go to work trimming that off. Give you a close-up there that you can see that the joint looks pretty good. Well, actually I have something sticking up here that won't give me a true reading. Okay, got that trimmed off so that it'll be good and flat across there. Now let's take the straight edge and check it one more time. And it looks really pretty good. It's probably a 1/16 of an inch above the top of the guitar now, back to the bridge. And I think we can make that work. I just glued put glue on the fretboard and on the neck, and got her sitting on here. I have there's kind of a strip of wood that peeled off when the fretboard popped off, and that strip of wood kind of acts as a gauge or a reference to line it up and get it in the right place. So I just left it on there like that, and that works out real good. Can you say overkill? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 clamps on there. They're not real tight, they're just smooth and easy, you know, just snug down good and snug. And every time you put a clamp on, you'll get more little glue squeeze out, you know, in a different place. So you really need a lot of clamps to get it to glue evenly and to stick on there real well. Now that we have the neck all put back on and the fretboard glued on and everything, there's a slide over bow in the neck. Didn't realize that before I glued it on there. But anyway, I'm going to more or less cut most of that out through the frets. This little tenor guitar is scuffed up all over the place, little tiny nicks, and I'm just going to go, I've got 1200 sandpaper here, and I'm just going to pretty much go over the whole instrument and just lightly sand it with 1200, which should get rid of a lot of the scratches and nicks. We're getting down to the wire on this little tenor guitar. I have taken it to the buffing wheel and buffed it out real good, and it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's looking pretty good. Looking like a well cared for old guitar again, that's what we go for. And I filled little tiny nicks and holes around the fretboard there, and I'm going to be dyeing those, you know, sanding those smooth and dyeing those to match and staining it, whatever it takes. And right now, while I'm waiting for that filler to dry, I am making the deer antler nut up here. So I'll have that made in just a few more minutes. I could have hid this in the video, I suppose, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It don't sound very good right now. The neck angle looks good to me, but there's an overbow in the neck. So, and the saddle's very low. They had lowered the saddle way down, I'm sure, because the strings were so high before. So I'm going to have to raise the saddle up, and I'm going to take a flat file and file some of that overbow out of those frets. It's not terrible, but it's you know, it's relatively significant, so I need to take some of that out. It's the old good news, bad news. This thing just keeps eating my lunch. Got it tuned up. It's gonna be kind of cool, but the bad news is the bridge is pulling loose. You can probably even see under it here. It's really pulling up bad. Didn't know the bridge was loose. So here we go again. The bridge appears to be so loose that I don't even need any heat, which is a good thing. That's kind of nice. I'm just sticking, the thing's just going right under there. I'm just hoping it'll continue to go right under there. It's not ebony anyway, it's some softer wood. So, and the saddle slot in it was so tiny that the new saddle I made was already deforming. It was only 60 thousandths wide. So it looks like I'm just going to make a new bridge. It'll be easier than trying to repair this one. This one just, it's, you know, you can see the splinters that came out of the bottom of it there. It'll just be easier and quicker just to make a new one. Found this nice chunk of rosewood, just about exactly the right size to make this out of. So it's just a scrap anyway, so that'd be perfect use for it. And it's quarter sawed, so it'll be a real good stout piece of wood and be better sounding than this piece of junk that was on there. Once again, I've got a fairly elaborate setup to drill holes through this blank. I noticed that the holes drilled through the original bridge were at an angle, and they weren't just straight down through it. So I made up this little rig here that'll hopefully give me a pretty close approximation to the same angle. This bridge is disintegrating as we speak. I knew it had a crack all the way down across it anyway, so I guarantee you this is the right thing to do, make a new bridge for this thing. I got the new bridge made. It only took about 25-30 minutes or so, and it really does look just like the old bridge, except I even have all the same angles and everything ground into it, and the bevels and all that. There's just a couple of differences. One, it's just a teeny bit wider this way, just so that it covers everything. And it's a teeny tiny bit longer this way, just so it covers everything. And lastly, it's a little bit thicker on the very ends. This one was crazy thin. The old bridge was just crazy thin. It had no strength at all. So I left this just slightly under 1/8 of an inch thick. The other one was like 50 thousandths. I mean, so it was less than half of the eighth, less than a 1/16 of an inch by quite a bit. So anyway, it was really thin. So this is a much better design, I believe, and it's much better wood. It's rosewood, and now I'm just going to just hand file and curve all the sharp edges, just to knock the sharpness off the edges. Just before I'm ready to glue the new bridge on to the guitar, I thought I would wipe it down with some acetone because rosewood has a lot of oils and resins. Now I promise you, I wiped this down with a dirty acetone rag first. Then I took a clean rag with acetone and wiped it down again. Here's what it looked like after the second wipe down with a clean rag. You can see how discolored it is. there's a lot of stuff going on this rosewood. So it's not a bad idea to wipe it down good before you glue it. Well, there she sits with the new bridge glued on, and we'll have to give her 24 hours now and let her set up real good. I think I finally got this thing licked. I think. I'm got my fingers crossed. Every time I feel like I'm done with this thing, if something else pops up. But the action's real nice. The neck reset worked real good. Got a new bone saddle up here, a new bone bridge, or I'm sorry, a new bone nut up here, a new bone saddle down here, and a new bridge down here. 3 new braces on the inside back, glued up 2 braces that were completely loose on the top, and yet another brace back there that was loose. I glued that back up, fixed all the cracks. Couldn't hardly have done much more to it, I don't think. Leveled the frets out, you know, repaired that end of the fretboard up there. I mean, I don't know how many things we did. Of course, I have no clue how to play a tenor guitar, but I'm just going to play it kind of like I play a mandolin and see what it sounds like. Here's a C, F, G, kind of neat little sound there. Pretty cool little instrument. I really like it. It's a well-made little instrument. You know, in hindsight, could I have done it better? Yeah, probably. If I'd have taken the back off of it, like I started to do and what I quoted the customer originally, probably could have made the cracks look a little bit better and things like that. Could have done a little better job. Of course, that would have messed up the binding all the way around, and that would have created another problem. So, I mean, you know, it's 6 in one half a dozen in the other. It was kind of neat to build a ship in a bottle, I guess. Hope you enjoyed this little build. Please tell your friends about my channel. If you feel the need to share any of my videos, please feel free to do so. So thank you very much for watching.